So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over some common GCSE Maths revision questions taken from foundation papers on number topics. Now as always, I'll include a link to the exam questions that we go through in this video as a link in the description, and I'll also include some lesson links that go over the topics including this test, so that if you do find that you're struggling with one particular topic, you can just simply easily access the lessons to go through it, so hopefully you would understand and cement your knowledge. Now attached is a copy of some exam questions taken from calculator and non-calculator questions, which generally cover majority of the number topics. Now remember that this is not inclusive. It doesn't test you on every single aspect of all the number problems. It's just a small collection just to hopefully highlight any particular areas of weakness that you've got in this particular section. Now the questions that we're going to go through cover topics like inequalities, fractions, decimals, percentages, just basic general calculations, problem solving, place value, BIDMAS, factors, LCM and HCF, prime factor decomposition, which is also known as products of their prime factors, lists and outcomes, roots and powers, indices, fractions of amounts, fraction calculations, area involving pi, standard form, decimal calculations, percentages, unit conversions, money, estimation, rounding, error intervals, and problems involving upper and lower bounds. Now the questions that we're going to go through are a mixture of calculator and non-calculator. It doesn't really specify which questions are non-calculator or calculator, but when it comes to revising, if you're not revising through past papers, I would always suggest try answer the question without using a calculator, just to improve on your general numeracy skills. But if you're really struggling, then reach for a calculator. Obviously more complex questions will be using a calculator, but if you do find you have got a complex question, it will be worth more marks on a non-calculator paper, because you will need to show full working out. And that's really important, that regardless of whether it's a calculator or a non-calculator paper question, I should say, always look at how many marks are on offer to determine how much working out you actually need to show. Now again, a little reminder that if you're wanting a copy of these questions, all you need to do is just simply click on the link in the description, and I strongly recommend you have an attempt at these questions before watching this video as we go through the answers. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 says circle the correct statement, and the same thing applies with question 2 as well. So here it's just a case of testing our knowledge of decimal numbers and inequalities. Now remember, with inequalities the arrow always points at the smaller number, or that the crocodile eats the bigger number, so it's just a case of making sure that you're aware which number is smaller and which one is bigger. Now with these decimals, I always prefer telling my students to treat it as money, because that makes more sense, because a lot of students comprehend money. So here we're looking at 7 pence and 70 pence, which is 0.7. So here we're looking for where the arrow is pointing at 0.07, or that the crocodile is eating the 0.7. So here our correct answer is going to be our third option. Moving on to question 2, so this is a mixture of decimals and fractions. So again, we want to be pointing at the smaller one. So here I would either convert 0.3 into a fraction or 1/4 as a decimal. Personally, I think 1/4 is going to be a lot easier. So here I can just cross that out and just write 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, and 0.25. So here I'm comparing 30 pence with 25 pence. Now 25 pence rather is smaller, so the correct answer is going to be our first option. Moving on to question 3, it says work out 43 times 8 minus 234 divided by 6. Now, although this is a set of mixture of non-calculator calculator, I personally would say that this is going to be a non-calculator question. So what we need to do is separately work these amounts out. Now, there are several ways of multiplying, and as long as you get it correct, they're not going to really be bothered about which method you choose. So here I'm just going to go for the column method. So I've got 8 times 3, which is 24. And then 8 times 4, which is 32, plus the 2 is 34. Then I've got to do 234 divided by 6. I'm going to use the bus stop method. So I've got 2, 3, and 4. How many 6s going to 2? None, so I carry the 2. How many 6s going to 23? That's going to be 3, remainder 5. And how many 6s going to 54? That's going to be 9. So here, doing the 2 substitutions, I get 344 minus 39. Now again, I'm going to use the column method to subtract. So here I need to make sure the top number is the same or higher, so borrow 1 from there. So 14 take away 9 is going to give me 5. 3 take away 3 is 0, and 3 take away nothing is 3, giving me a final answer of 305. Moving on to question 4, it says Kim buys pet food in 1.5 kilogram packs. Her pet food needs 0.8 kilograms of food each week. She wants to have enough food for the next 14 weeks. She already has 2 1.5 kilogram packs. Work out the smallest number of packs she needs to buy, and you must show your working out. Now this question I would probably assume is going to be a calculator question, although if it was non-calculator it would be a little bit more challenging, probably a little bit worth more than 4 marks. So for this, first thing we need to do is just make sure that all our units are the same. So here we've got kilograms, we've got no mention of grams, so we're looking good. So first of all, let's work out how much actual pet food this pet needs. So for a 2-week supply, we know that the pet needs 0.8 grams each week, and we're looking at 14 weeks. So that's going to be 14 times 0.8, which gives me an answer of 11.2 kilograms. So that's how much food the pet needs. Now she already has 2 1.5 kilogram packs, so she has 2 times 1.5, which is 3 kilograms of pet food. So she needs 11.2 minus 3, which is 8.2 kilograms. Now the packs of food comes in packs of 1.5 kilograms, so the packs needed is going to be 8.2 divided by 1.5, which gives me an answer of 5.46 recurring. Now obviously you can't buy 0.46 of a bag, so therefore she's going to need 6 bags, and that's the minimum amount she's going to need to supply the pet for 2 weeks. Moving on to question 5, it says circle the value of the digit 5 in 256,934. So looking at place value, the 5 represents 10,000. So here we've got 5 times 10,000, which is going to give me my 4th option. It then says for question 6, circle the value of the digit 7 in 9.17. So this first one is a tenth, so that's going to be a hundredth. So it's 7 times 100th, which is 7 over 100, which again is our 4th option. Moving on to question 7, it says here are 2 calculations, and it's basically using BIDMAS. It says use the brackets and the signs plus, minus, multiply and divide to make the following calculations true. Now there are several combinations for you to get the full 2 marks on these particular 2 aspects. So again, I would probably go for the most common one. So for the first one, I'd go for 4 times 4, which is 16, and then 4 plus 4, which is 8. And if I divide those 2 answers together, I'm going to get 2. And for the second one, I would say probably the most common one is adding the first 3 4s, working out the answer, and then dividing. Now again, making sure you've got brackets. Now I would say this is a non-calculator question. If you want to check your answer, I would enter it exactly how you've done it, with the brackets, with the calculation symbols. Enter it on your calculator. If it gives you either 2 or 3, you're going to get full marks for it. But like I said, there are several answers which you can do, but I would probably say that these 2 that I've done on the screen is probably going to be the most common. Moving on to question 8, it says students are put into 9 groups. 5 groups each have 24 students, and the other 4 groups have an equal number of students. Altogether there are 204 students. How many students are there in each of the 4 groups? So for this, again, a lot of problem solving questions in terms of this one. So again, the first thing we need to establish is how many students are there in the 5 groups of 24. So if I just write a little prompt, so the 5 groups total is going to be 5 times 24, which gives me an answer of 120. Now how I got 120, if it's on a calculator paper, just simply type it into your calculator. If not, you'll have to work it out using your preferred method. Now in terms of the next mark, I then need to work out how many students are left. So I'm going to take away that 120 from 204. So 204 minus 120, which gives me an answer of 84 students. Now we know that that's going to be the total of the 4 groups, and we've got to divide this number by 4 because there's equal number of students in each of those 4 groups. So then I've got to do 84 divided by 4, which gives me a final answer of 21 students. Moving on to question 9, it says write down all the factors of 18. Now a factor is a number that divides into. Now again, in terms of the factors, all you need to do is just basically halve the number and then just go through the numbers and see what you can divide into. So 1 will definitely go into it, 2 does, 3 does, 4 doesn't, 5 doesn't, 6 does, 9 does, and 18. And again, a nice way of remembering these, if you start with 1, you've got 1 times 18, 2 times 9, and 3 times 6. Then says work out the lowest common multiple of 12 and 15. Now again, there's several methods in which you can choose, but I would say the most common is probably just writing down the 15 times table or a few multiples. And then 19, that carries on. And then if I go for 12, I've got 12, 24, 36, 48, and 16. You can see 60 is the first number that appears in both. So there is my final answer. Then for question 10, it says work out the highest common factor of 75 and 105. And again, several different ways in which you could show this. You can either do a Venn diagram or you could do a factor tree. Personally, I would say probably a factor tree is probably the most common. So 2 numbers, and again, your starting numbers might be completely different, but your end numbers should be exactly the same. So I'm going to go for 25 times 3. 3 is prime. 5 times 5, and both those numbers are prime. Then if I do 105, again, I'm going to divide by 5 because it ends in a 5, and that's going to be 21. 5's prime, and then 7 times 3, and both those 2 numbers are prime. So if I then write 75 as 3 times 5 times 5, and then 105 as 3 times 5 times 7, and then all I then need to do is circle the numbers that appear in both, and then just pick one list, which is 3 times 5, so the HCF is going to be 3 times 5, which is 15. Now, if you knew it straight away, would you get full marks if I just wrote 15? Yes, because that is the highest common factor. Another common factor you could have wrote, if I wrote 1, that will probably get me 1 mark. If I wrote 5, that will probably get me 1 mark, because although that is a factor, it's not the highest common factor. So that's where the marks are going to be allocated. Then for question 11, it says write 36 as a product of their primes. Now if it's a non-calculator, I would suggest you doing a factor tree. So here I've got 6 times 6, and then I've got 3 times 2, circle those 2, 3 times 2, circle those 2. So here I've got 36 equals 2 times 2 times 3 times 3, and then writing them as powers, that's going to be 2 squared times 3 squared. Now if I just left my answer like this, then I'm going to lose a mark, because the actual question does say to leave your answer in index form. An index form basically means with powers. Moving on to question 12, it says a team of 2 players is picked from these people, and we've got Amy and Laura in the females. Males, we've got Eric, Rob and Tim, and it says the team must have 1 female player and 1 male player. Complete the list to show all possible teams. Now for this you want to do this systematically, so it started with Amy. It's giving me 1 example. So I've got Amy and Eric, which is done. I then need to do Amy and Rob, and then Amy and Tim. Then moving on to the next one, I've got Laura and Eric. I've then got Laura and Rob. And then finally, I've got Laura and Tim. And there we go. So there are our 5 options. Again, you could have it in absolutely any order, but as long as they're different and you've got those 5 listed, you're going to get the full marks. Moving on to question 13.8 says write down the value of the root of 100. So here you should know that 100 is a square number. So what times what gives you 100? That's going to be 10. Write down the value of 13 squared. Well, again, if you don't know what 13 squared is, I would recommend that you just do 13 times 13, in which you should have an answer of 169. Then for 14.8 it says simplify a to the power of 20 times a to the power of 5. Now this is using the rules of indices. So when we're multiplying, we add the powers. So 20 plus 5 is 25. So the answer then is going to be a to the power of 25. Then similarly for question 14, it says we're dividing. So here we take away the powers. So it's going to be 20 take away 5, which gives us an answer of a to the power of 15. Then with brackets, what do we do here? Well, with brackets, we multiply. So here I'm going to have 5 times 20, which gives me a final answer of 100, or a to the power of 100, I should say. Then moving on to question 15, it says the water container is 1/8 full. 45 litres of water are poured into the container and the container is now 3/4 full. When the container is full, how much water does it hold? Now for this particular question, what we need to do is first of all find the difference as a fraction. So we started off with 1/8 and we're now at 3/4. So if I work out the difference, so I've got 3/4 minus 1/8. Now if this was on a calculator paper, I could just simply type into my calculator. If not, I need to get a common denominator, so that's going to be 6/8 minus 1/8, which is 5/8. Now it then says that 45 litres was poured into the container, so 45 litres equals 5/8. Now the 45 litres is basically 5 parts, and 8 parts is the total. So if I take that 45 litres is 5 parts, so 45 litres equals 5 parts, then that means that 1 part is going to be 45 divided by 5, which is 9, so 9 litres. And if the total is 8 parts, so that means that the total capacity of the container is going to be 8 times 9, which is 72. Then moving on to question 16, it says D equals 4/5, E equals 1/2, and F equals 2/5. Work out the value of D plus E times F. So if I just simply substitute the numbers in, I get 4/5 plus 1/2 plus times 2/5. Now using BIDMAS, I need to do this bit first. So here 1/2 times 2/5, well I just multiply the numerators together, so that gets me 2. Multiply the denominators together, that gives me 10. So then what I'm working out is 4/5 plus 2/10. So again I need a common denominator, so I multiply the first fraction by 2, so that gives me 8/10 plus 2/10, which equals 10/10, which equals 1. So there is my final answer. Moving on to question 17, it says here is a quarter circle with a radius of 6 centimeters. Work out the area of the quarter circle. Give your answer in terms of pi. Now in terms of a full circle area, well the formula is pi times r squared. Now here the radius is 6, so the full circle is going to be pi times 36, which written in terms of pi is 36 pi. However, I've only got a quarter of that, so I then need to divide that by 4. So 36 pi divided by 4. Now here I just focus on the numbers, so 36 divided by 4 is going to give me 9. So then the final answer then is going to be 9 pi. So I can just cancel those down, so that's 9 and 1. So then it gives me a final answer of 9 pi. Moving on to question 18, so we're now moving on to standard form. So it says write 0.000583 in standard form. So for this I underline the numbers, ignoring any zeros at the start. So I'm going to write this number 583 as a number between 1 and 10, so that's going to be 5.83 multiplied by 10. Now because this is a small number, it's going to have a negative power. So then focusing on the decimal point of 5.8, I then just need to count the number of places I've moved it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's going to be to the power of -4. Then moving on to question 18b, it says write 9.416 times 10 to the power of 5 as an ordinary number. So here I've got 9.416. I'm going to move the decimal point 5 places, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I fill in the empty gaps with zeros, so that's going to give me a final answer of 941,600. Then moving on to 18c, it says divide 7,200 million by 300. Give your answer in standard form. So this number in standard form is going to be 7200 times 10 to the power of 6. Now millions has 6 zeros, so that's going to be 7200, and then I'm just going to write 6 zeros. Then we're going to divide that by 300. So then from here, if I cancel out the zeros, so 0 from the top, 0 from the bottom, I'm left with this number. So then if I do some division, so I've got 3 divided by 7, 2, 0, 0, and just be careful, you're going to include all the zeros, like so. And then I'm just going to do the division. So I've got 3 goes into 7 twice with a remainder 1. 3 goes into 12 4 times with no remainder. So I've just got the rest of the numbers in zeros. So the last thing for me to then do is just convert this number here into standard form. So that's going to be 2.4 times 10 to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's positive 7 because we have got a big number. Moving on to question 19, it says which is bigger, 0.38 or 3/8. Now for this, what you want to do when you're comparing decimals and fractions, you want to convert them so they're both the same. So you can either convert 38 as a fraction or 0.38 as a fraction, or you convert 3/8 into a decimal. Now for this, I'm going to go for 3/8 into a decimal. So that's going to be 8 divided by 3, and I'm just going to add a few zeros because I know it's going to be a decimal number. So then from this, how many 8s go into 3? Well, that's going to be none. Carry the 3. How many 8s go into 30? That's going to be 3. 24, which gives me a remainder of 6. How many 8s go into 60? That's going to be 7, which is 56 rather, with a remainder of 4. And then how many 8s go into 40? That's going to be 5. So 3/8 is equal to 0.375. So if I then compare that to 0.38, the question is asking which one is bigger. Well, it's going to be 0.38. Moving on to question 20, it says as a decimal, 11 over 40 is 0.275. Work out 33 over 400 as a decimal. Now I'm going to assume that this is a non-calculator question, because if it was a calculator question, you could simply type it in your calculator and boom, you've got your answer. So for this, what we need to do is we need to just compare 11 over 40 to 33 over 400. Now, to get from 11 to 33, we need to multiply by 3. And to get from 40 to 400, I need to multiply by 10. So for this, what I need to do is multiply by 3. And then because the denominator is multiplying by 10, we then need to divide the answer by 10. So what I need to do is 0.27 times 3. And again, you can do that in any which way you want in terms of how you multiply in decimals. So here we've got 275 multiplied by 3. If I just move the decimal point 3 places that way. So here I've got 15, 21 plus 1 is 22, and then 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So then move the decimal point 3 places, 1, 2, 3. So that gives me an answer of 0.825. I then need to divide this number by 10, so I do that by moving the decimal point 1 place to the left. So that gives me a final answer of 0.0825. Another alternative you could have done is recognize that to get from 11 over 40 times by something equals 33 over 400, well, that's going to be 3 over 10. Now 3/10 is 0.3, so if I do 0.3 times 0.275, and again, if you're good with your multiplying with decimals, if I work that out, I would still get the same answer. So again, two different ways of working this out, and it's entirely up to you which one you choose. As long as you show full working out and you get the right answer, you're looking good for the 2 marks. Moving on to question 21, it says Alice has £4, Billy has twice as much as Alice, Billy has 2/3 of the amount Chris has, and the amount that Chris has 4/5 of his age in years. How old is Chris? So for this, what we need to do is, first of all, let's just write down the facts that we know given in the question. So we know that Alice has got £4. We know that Billy has got twice as much. So that's going to be 4 times 2, which is 8. Now, Billy has 2/3 the amount of Chris has, so 2/3 equals £8. So £8 equals 2 parts. So therefore, 1 part is going to equal £4, and therefore 3 parts, which is the total, is going to be 4 times 3, which is 12. So that means that Chris is going to have £12. It then says that Chris has 4/5 of his age in years. So that means that 12 equals 4/5. So from this, we know that 4 parts equals 12. So therefore, 1 part is going to be 12 divided by 4, which is 3. Now the total is 5 parts. So therefore, 5 times 3 is 15. Then moving on to question 22A, it says, on a Saturday, a museum has 175 visitors. 28% of them are given a questionnaire. How many visitors are given the questionnaire? So for this, we need to work out 28% of 175. Now, I would probably assume this is going to be on a calculator paper. So if I convert 28% into a decimal, so it's 0.28, multiply that by 175, I get an answer of 49. Alternately, you could have done 28 over 100 multiplied by 175 and you would still get the same answer. Moving on to 22B, it says on Sunday the museum has 242 visitors. 2/11 of them given the questionnaire. Were more people given the questionnaire on Saturday or Sunday? So first of all, what I need to do is work out 2/11 of 242. Now again, if I just type that into my calculator, of means times. So if I just enter that into my calculator, I get an answer of 44. So if 44 were on Sunday, and going back to part A, 49 were on Saturday, which day were more people given the questionnaire? Well, the answer then is going to be Saturday. Ooh. And there we go. Then for question 23, it says a builder has a pipe that is 2 meters long. He wants to cut lengths of 80 centimeters, 45 centimeters, and 70 centimeters. Does he have enough pipe? You must show you're working. Now for this, what we've got is a difference of units. So here I've got centimeters and I've got meters. So what I need to do is work with the same unit. So here I'm going to convert 2 meters into 200 centimeters, and I'm just going to be working in centimeters. So if I add these 3 amounts up, so I've got 80 plus 45 plus 70, which gives me an answer of 195 centimeters. Then if I compare that to 200 centimeters, well, yes, the builder will. So the answer then is yes. Moving on to question 24, it says here is a sign for a car park, and it says for question A, Lucy paid £2.85 to park. How many hours did she pay for? So again, it's 95 pence per hour. So here we've got a conversion of units because we've got pounds and we've got pence. So 95 pence per hour is the same as 0.95 pounds. So then if I then do 2.85 divided by 0.95, alternately I could have converted it into pence. So that's going to be 285 pence. So if I do 285 divided by 95, it's going to give me the same answer, which is 3. Then it says for question 24B, Lucy paid exactly £2.85. She used 6 coins and she did not use a £1 coin. Show 3 different ways in which she could have paid. And again, the coins she could have used are either £2, £1, 50 pence, 20 pence, 10 pence, and 5 pence. Now she didn't use a pound, so I can't use that. Now again, the 3 possible answers you can have, and you can write the coins in any particular order, is going to be £2, then 50 pence, then 10 pence, then 10 pence, then 10 pence, then 5 pence. Another combination you could have is £2, then 50 pence, then 20 pence, and then 3 5 pence pieces. And then for the last one, we've got £2, 20 pence, 20 pence, 20 pence, and 20 pence, and 5 pence. And again, you could have any of those combinations in any order. You could also have the coins in different orders as well. But as long as it all totals up to £2.85 and you're using 3 different ways, you're going to get the 2 marks. Moving on to question 25, it says use approximations to estimate the value of 9.9 times 41. Now what you want to do here is round to the nearest significant figure. So this number rounded up is going to be 10. This number to the nearest 10 is going to be 40. So it's going to be 10 times 40, which is 400. Then for question 26 says use your calculator to work out the square root of 401 as a decimal. Write down your full answer on your calculator display. So if I just load up my calculator, which may take a couple of seconds, there we go. So if I just press square root 701, just close the bracket because it comes up on mine, and then all I want to do is just copy that number. So it's 26.47640459. And just double check to make sure that I've memorized that correctly, and yes, I have. Then for question 26b, it says give your answer to part A to 1 decimal place. So again, if I round this number up to 1 decimal place, the digit next to the 4 is greater than 4, so I add 1 to the number previous, so it's going to be 26.5. Then for question 27, it says the height of a tree is 12 meters, correct to the nearest meter, circle the error interval. Now the nearest meter, well, that's 1, so if I divide that by 2, that gives me 0.5. So then what I want to do is 12 plus or minus 0.5, which is 11.5 and 12.5. Now it can equal this one, but it can't equal this one, so the correct answer I need to circle is going to be the first response. Then for question 28, which is our last question, it says to the nearest pound, John has £9. To the nearest 50 pence, Ellie has £6.50. Work out the maximum possible total amount of money. So looking at John, well, again, to the nearest pound, if I halve that by 2, I get 50 pence. So that's going to be £8.50. And if I just write M, and that could be equal to that, and that's going to be £9.50. Now, in terms of the greatest amount, because it can't equal £9.50, it's going to be £9.49. So that's the maximum number. Then for Ellie, and let's just get a different colour for Ellie. So Ellie, her error bound is going to be to the nearest 50 pence. 50 pence divided by 2 is 25 pence. So if I add and subtract it from £6.50, that's going to give me £6.25 to £6.75. And again, it can't equal £6.75, so the maximum number is going to be £6.74. Then all that's left for me to then do, the question saying what's the maximum total? So if I just add those two numbers up, 9 plus 4 is 13, 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 7 is 12, and then 9 plus 1 plus 6 is 16. So the answer then is £16.23. And there we go.